In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 2, Paul described Christ's death like this: Christ loved us and gave himself for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So in Paul's mind, when Christ suffered and died for him, Christ was an aroma, like an incense, and God was leaning over as he poured out his wrath on his own Son. He was leaning over and saying, that's the most beautiful thing I have ever seen or ever will see. And it smells magnificent to me. That's the picture of the death of Christ before the Father. Now, Paul sees himself captured by this Christ and commissioned to extend that love and that suffering to the world. So that he now, bearing in his body the stripes of Jesus, sharing the very sufferings of Christ, becomes the same aroma to God. God leans over Paul's sufferings when he's in prison and when he's being beaten with rods and stripes, when he's being driven out of the synagogue, when he's shipwrecked in the sea. God leans over and says, what a beautiful aroma. That's why I get teary-eyed looking at those missionaries. They're so conflicted. Their lives are so embattled. I just hope they know. I hope you help them know. They smell so good to God. So that's the starting place of this picture. It's not the ending place. It's the starting place of this picture. And then comes this almost unbearable effect on people of this fragrance. There's a heart rejoicing and a heart-breaking part to it, isn't there? The aroma of Christ in Paul suffering to God, this aroma divides the world. So let's read how that happens in verses 15 and 16. For we are the aroma of Christ to God among those who are being saved and those who are perishing. To the one, fragrance from death to death, and to the other, a fragrance from life to life. Some people smell the sacrificial love of Christ embodied in the suffering apostle as a stench of the grave. They hear the gospel and they hear death. They look at the cross and they see death. They see no life, no hope, no future, no joy, and they turn away. And if they turn away forever, they perish. And the smell becomes a death smell for them. They don't see Christ as precious, and they don't see his suffering as a treasure. They don't smell his death for sinners as the sweetest fragrance in the universe. They just smell death. And then the other side, in verse 16, to one a fragrance from death to death, to the other a fragrance from life to life. For those who are being saved, the smell of the death of Jesus seen in the suffering of the missionary and the truth of the gospel that they speak, for some it is a fragrance from life to life. They smell an aroma of life. They see a substitute for their sins, and they say, that's the sweetest news I've ever heard in my life. That in facing an all-holy God, this sinner could have a substitute so that he carries my sin, bears my wrath, provides my righteousness, opens life. That really smells good. And they live.